In court defending the rights of the public's civil liberties. But today, motorcycle clubs lodged an application for a High Court challenge to Queensland's controversial anti-bikie laws. Their barristers argue the laws are unconstitutional and amount to an attack on the judiciary, freedom of speech and the right to associate. The Queensland government says the unprecedented crackdown on organised crime is having the desired effect, keeping the state safe. David Lewis reports.
The man steering this Harley-Davidson is on a mission to convince both the public and the High Court that most bikies really aren't that bad. Stefan Kuczborski considers himself more of a free spirit than an outlaw.
I love riding motorcycles, I love living the lifestyle. The camaraderie, the freedom, the partying, the girls, the motorcycles, the parties, all of it.
The 44-year-old tattooist, originally from Poland, is a member of the Hells Angels with a minor drug possession conviction. Why do you think you were chosen as the...
Well, I just put my hand up because I strongly believe in it. I want to live in a democracy. I want to live in a free country. I've seen what totalitarianism does. I lived through it when I was young in communist Poland. I just don't want to live in a society like that.
The Robina town centre was packed with weekend shoppers when the gunman opened fire just before 2 o'clock.
It was the shooting of an innocent bystander at a Gold Coast shopping mall in 2012 that threw the national spotlight on Queensland bikie gangs. A violent brawl in the same city a year later prompted a legislative crackdown.
These criminal gang members are committing burglaries, rape, extortion, car thefts. They're selling drugs to our kids on the street.
This is a time for us to all work together.
6 months ago, the Queensland Parliament quickly passed a series of laws effectively criminalising 26 motorcycle clubs. All members and associates are now subject to tough mandatory sentences for crime and can no longer meet in public or work in tattoo parlours. Hundreds of raids and arrests have since taken place.
These laws are working. We've had at the Gold Coast a 45% reduction in armed robberies, we've had a 25% reduction in assaults on individuals, and that's because these gangs are too scared to go out on the streets, which they used to, well, in their own words, they said they owned the streets.
Well, I wouldn't want to trivialise, what people have done. However, there's crime everywhere and there's criminal justice system to deal with it. I haven't committed those crimes. I shouldn't be punished for it.
This legal team has spent months preparing an application for a High Court challenge, arguing the laws are unconstitutional.
The laws personally offend me. I think they're unnecessary, I think they're unfair, and I frankly think they're counterproductive.
Late this afternoon, they finally lodged their application at the Commonwealth Law Courts building in Brisbane. Well, this brings to an end months of speculation about whether the controversial anti-bikie laws would in fact be challenged. Now that the application has been submitted, the Queensland Government will learn for the first time what aspects of the legal crackdown are being disputed. But even before he'd seen the final details, the Attorney-General was confident the laws would stack up.
Having a High Court challenge comes as no surprise. We said it at the time of introduction that we expected the laws to be challenged. My only surprise is it's taken them so long to challenge them.
Which preserve rights.
The barristers are seeking to overturn more than a dozen changes to the law. Of particular concern are tough new mandatory jail terms of between 15 and 25 years for gang-related crime. That punishment is imposed on top of the usual sentence.
So when a person gets convicted of a particular offence, that person might only get a bond or a fine. However, it's imposed on the judge that he or she must add 15 or 25 years to that offence.
We have mandatory sentencing for murder in Queensland. We have the two-strike sex offender laws, which is a mandatory sentencing. So mandatory sentencing is not anything new for Queensland.
The legal team is also hoping to strike down new laws that make it an offence for 3 or more members of a criminal organisation to knowingly meet in public. While we were filming, this rebel's bikie had to stay on the street, while Stefan Kuczborski and his mate were inside the tattoo parlour.
It's very frustrating. You've got to think before you go anywhere. There's a chance you could be arrested at any time.
Police swooped on the five during raids on the Sunshine Coast.
Last year, 5 men with alleged links to bikie groups were arrested and charged after meeting for a drink at a pub in the Sunshine Coast hinterland.
They're not in jail for stealing or robbing or anything that can be done. You know, they're in jail for going to a pub to have a beer.
The High Court hasn't really developed so far the law on questions of association and constitutional rights to association. It's had opportunities in the past, but it hasn't done so as yet. This one might be the one that gives them an opportunity to explore in a bit more detail the extent to which people have or should have a right to associate.
If the laws are challenged and elements are held invalid, then the government will of course go back to the drawing board. But we're not going to give up on behalf of Queenslanders to make sure that we provide and have the best and the safest streets we can.
Stefan Kuczborski, whose livelihood is at stake, isn't contemplating defeat.
Well, you don't go into a fight expecting to lose, so we're playing to win, so we'll just see what happens.
David Lewis reporting. 4 days on from the South Australia election, and it's still not known who will form government. The latest count has Labor 1 seat short of the majority needed to govern in their own right. The state's 2 independent MPs have met with both Labor and Liberal leaders to thrash out who they'll side with in a hung parliament. Now, one